Okay, so tonight is the third web chat that we're having, and it's on Gotcha Day. And basically, I'm going to try to go through like the first 24 hours that you have your child. I've adopted 8 kids. We did 4 single adoptions, and then we did 2 double adoptions. I went on, so the 6 trips, I went on 5 of the 6 trips. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what your Gotcha Day might look like, and some of the trauma behaviors and fear behaviors that you might see in your child when you get them. I have no idea how many of you are just getting 1 child or 2, or whether they're young or old. So I'm just going to give you all my experiences because I've done both of those things. So in 2005 was our first adoption, and that was our little girl, Cassie. Her special need was microtia atresia, which just means that she didn't have the outer part of her ear. So kind of an easy special need, and that's honestly what God needed to give us for our first adoption. So we went in and we took our whole family because we thought it was going to be our only adoption. And so we had my mom and our 2 biological girls who were 15 and 12 at the time. We ended up going to a civil affairs office, which I would say is probably where 75% of the time is where you're going to get your child, is at the Provincial City Civil Affairs Office, which is kind of like maybe our state capital. Their provincial city is where the government is for that province, and usually where the adoptions take place for any orphanage that's in that province. So we walked up the steps. I saw my daughter Cassie sitting on a bench, and she just had like the stone cold stare on her face. She was only 20 months old. So we were taken into another room, and then they called out our passport, like our name, and we had to give our passports and show who we were, and then we were matched up with the right child. At that time, that adoption, we were with one other family that had a child coming from the same orphanage. We were with another family from our agency that had another child coming from a different orphanage in the same province. And then there was one more family there who wasn't with our agency. So we had a lot of different things to watch. We weren't the first family given our child. Usually it's a little ceremonial. And, they call out the name and they give the child over, and, you can take pictures for each other, video. So we witnessed 2 kids go to their new parents, and they were basically very stoic and just didn't have much of an expression on their face. That was our child and the one that was from the same orphanage. We had another little girl who was brought in. She was a little older, probably about 2.5. And she walked in and couldn't have been a happier little girl, and just flung herself into her parents' arms. And it was like the adoption scene that your dreams are made of. And then the 4th little girl came in, who happened to be with our agency, and she was bigger than all the other kids, but younger than most of them. And she came in full out, kicking and screaming and shaking her head no. So I kind of got to witness the whole scenario of like from the good end to the bad end in that first adoption. Once you're given your kids, you usually have to do some paperwork. The Gotcha Day or Family Day, if you want to call it that. I know Gotcha is kind of a term that some people don't like, so you just call it what you want. That day, you usually sign paperwork that says that you will have the next 24 hours to decide if this child is the child that you wish to take home with you. If the child is everything you expected, if the medical needs are what you expected, etc. So basically, it's your time of scrutinizing if you've done the right thing. And a lot of times, there's just no issue. People have their mind made up when they leave and they go and they get their child, that this is going to happen no matter what my child is like, I'm taking them home. And well-prepared families will know that it's going to be a difficult transition, most likely. So you want to keep that in mind, that a lot of times your adoption day is not what you expect. I put a little I'll call out on my Facebook today to try to get some people to give me some ideas of what their adoption days were. And my friend wrote, expect nothing and embrace chaos. So that kind of gives you an idea of expectation-wise. You know, you can't really predict it. All these different examples are going to be different from each other depending on your child's age, the preparation that they've had, the special needs that they have. You just really, really have to go with the flow. And I really feel that that is a good mantra for the whole trip, because a lot of times that's what the trip is. It's stressful, it's hard. You're in a country that you have not experienced before sometimes, or you know, you just aren't a good traveler, but you just go with the flow and you try to duck the punches and roll with whatever happens. Our second adoption was the first little boy that came into our family, and he was 2.5 years old, and he was very quiet and didn't say much, just kind of looked at everybody. And he was fine at the civil affairs office, actually even played with a little ball. But once we got inside our hotel room, he stood at the door and sobbed and whimpered, and it was like the most heartbreaking cry I've ever heard. And I felt so sad for him. But I think what happened was we took him out of his comfort zone of being surrounded by Asian people, and all he had was us. He was stuck with us, and it was somebody that he didn't know, and he was like in this tiny hotel room. So that was hard for him. And you may adopt a child who wants to be in the hotel room all the time, or you may find that your child wants to be out and going and going and going and going. Not always the best thing to honor that wish. Overstimulation can really bring out some difficult behaviors, but you have to throw your parenting out the door starting at Gotcha Day. Everything that you learned, your child is completely full of fear and could have been potentially not cared for in a good way. And so you have to follow your mother's instinct and your daddy's instinct, and just make their world small, and just start by trying to make eye contact with your child. A lot of times they won't even look at you. They just want to be in a corner. They don't want to take their clothes off. They don't want to take a bath. They just want to exist. And so little by little, they'll start breaking out of their shell and opening up. But it can really take several days for that to happen. I've been told by a lot of people that a lot of the breakthrough comes on the 4th day. And you may have 3 days of no eating and no drinking and no talking and shutting down, or you may have the perfect little person that you dreamed of. So you have to kind of be ready, but in both situations. I wanted to address the 24-hour harmonious period. Once you get your child, usually you are taken to the police station to get a picture taken with your child. Whatever adult is there, whether it's mom or dad or both of you, you get that picture taken, and that is their picture that is put on their red book adoption registration. And then they also get a passport photo taken for their passport, which is why you're in the country for the week in the province, is because it takes that long to make their passport. And then that's when you get the passport, you fly down to Guangzhou, and that's where you get your visa process done. So it's basically the Chinese portion of the adoption is the first week, and the United States portion is the second week. As far as my other Gotcha days, I did adopt a child who was really, really sick. He came to me, we got him on Monday, and he has heart disease, a 3-chamber heart. All of his pictures he looked fantastic in. We knew that he had lack of oxygen because his fingers were clubbed. They look like little lollipops on the end. They were very swollen and bulbous. But when they brought him in, he was basically kind of having a cyanotic attack. Basically, his blood was so low that he really wasn't he was barely awake. He was all kinds of shades of purple, and just wasn't doing very well. And from what I can tell, every time he ate, he had one of these episodes where he would turn purple, he would breathe really heavily, and his oxygen would go far down. So Joey's adoption was really different. We basically expedited everything. We got him on Monday. We finalized on Tuesday. Wednesday, we went to the train station and left for an overnight train to Guangzhou. When we got there at 6 a.m. in the morning, we had a 7:30 medical appointment. And then all the medicals were done and the visa interview was done at 1 o'clock that afternoon. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the visa interview, you don't go to. So that consulate appointment that we're all making, you know, at the end, and we're getting a consulate appointment, is something that your guide goes to for you and presents your paperwork. So that was Thursday. On Friday, we actually went and took our oath and got the visa. That's the part that you do go to, which is usually the next day. And then the following morning, we left and came home. So that was a very unusual trip, a very God-driven trip. There were things that happened that I can only say were, you know, doors were opened by the Lord. So cool things and great testimonies with that. So I'm going to talk about my older girl's adoption. That was our first double adoption, and we adopted an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old who was aging out. So basically she was 13 years, 361 days when we got her. She acted like an 8-year-old, and she was very flighty, and I could tell she was really visibly nervous. And she was crinkling up a water bottle the whole time I was kneading her and just twisting it and playing with her clothes and things. And she was very, very well prepared for adoption as an older child, and yet she was completely scared. So, but she was talking to me. She was smiling. She was allowing to have pictures taken. So it was a good experience, and she had a teacher of hers that was with her on adoption day, and that teacher literally got right down in her face, and I could tell she was saying, "This is going to be okay. This is the best thing for you. You're going to be fine." And so we left, and she really did great, but she was really, really petrified. She came with a tiny little spiral notebook that had Chinese and English written into it, so she could say, she could show me the picture that said, "I am hungry," or "I'm thirsty," or "I need to go to the bathroom," "I'm scared." All those things were on there, so she felt like she had a little bit of communication, it was very, very helpful. About the third day, she started showing her personality. She hated having her picture taken. So all of a sudden, she stopped saying no. She started saying, "No, I'm not going to have my picture taken." So I knew then that she was starting to get comfortable with me. She was starting to trust me that I wasn't going to hurt her, and she was feeling comfortable enough that she could express her discontent with something and not have fear of me hurting her. So anyway, that worked out really nicely. On the Monday, so we got her Thursday, finalized Friday, and on Monday she turned 14. And of course, I went out and got this giant cake, and it was chocolate and full of yummy chocolate stuff. And I got it back, and she said, "Mom, I know like chocolate." So she was actually saying, you know, "Look, I don't really want this." And to this day, she doesn't like chocolate, and she doesn't like sweets. So that's a good sign. When you start seeing your child express their opinions after they've been shut down for a while, that's a really good sign that they're coming around and they're starting to trust you. And that's what you have to build up, is you have to build up their trust. Number one, they're probably fearful of if they're going to be fed or not. They're going to be fearful of being hurt by you. They're going to be fearful of being left by you as well. They have no assurances at all that any of the things that they need physically are going to happen, because they don't have any reason to trust you. So that's what you're trying to show them, is you can trust me. I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm going to take care of your needs. The first 24 hours, I would give them any food they wanted. If they want to eat 4 bags of potato chips and some candy, let them have it. They just want to know that you are going to meet their needs. That's one of the biggest things. And even today, I have a child who just doesn't know if he's going to get his next meal. And so I have a snack drawer, and I keep the snack drawer filled up with things that he likes. And he knows that any time during the day, he can go to his drawer and pull out a snack and eat it, and I won't say a word to him. And it's just something that he knows is always there. So I would definitely say to have some availability of food. You may find that your child has the absolute opposite. They don't want to eat and they don't want to drink. They don't want to take their clothes off. And that is part of them wanting to have some control over their life. They have been told what to do all their life, and now they're getting thrown into this other situation that they have no idea what's happening. And so they're going to do fight or flight. They're gonna shut down on you. This happens a lot with young children, you know, in the, I don't know, 18-month to 2.5-year-old stage, where that's the one thing that they can control. It's not, you know, they can't like make you not take your clothes off, but they can definitely say, I'm not going to eat or I'm not going to drink. So just try to keep them hydrated as best you can, and know that a lot of us have been through that, and they usually come around and they eat just fine and everything works out. But the first few days can be very, very trying and very stressful. I remember when I got Samantha, she's my 14-year-old, the actions that she was showing to me, it made me think that she had Down syndrome. And I remember having a moment of panic on Gotcha Day, because I looked at her and I was like, what's going on here? She's so fidgety and she's just kind of spacing out. And she was considered non-special needs. The only need she had was that she was too old. And I really had a panic. I didn't have any kids that had a cognitive disability. But you know, later on down the road, but in those 24 hours, she showed me that she really was all there, and my fears were put to rest, and we moved on with everything. So then we went and got our other child, who is an 11-year-old young lady. She's now 17, and she has arthrogryposis. That is a special need where your joints are affected. You have tight wrists, tight elbows, tight shoulders, not a lot of muscle mass in your upper body. Shoulders are very, very skinny. And then she had clubbed feet to the extent that her toes were pointing in to each other, and then her feet were completely flipped over. So her heels were facing up, and she was walking on the tops of her feet. So I had seen video of her. I had really not researched the special need very well. I was kind of on my high horse and thinking, well, you know, I brought home a really sick kid, and I brought home a little girl that's deaf and has spina bifida, and like I can handle everything. But I was very wrong. Piper was not what I expected at all. She was basically an 11-year-old that needed to be taken care of like a 2-year-old. And I was angry, I guess is the best way to put it. I was feeling that I got duped by China, and I was mad about it. I had 4 little tiny kids at home. They were 4, 5, and 6, and I wanted an 11-year-old, not a child that I had to take care of all the time. So the biggest kicker was that they had checked on the medical file that she could do steps. And we lived in a split foyer where you walk inside into the doors and you either go up or down before you even hit a room. And as we were leaving the civil affairs office, we had 3 flights of stairs to go down. And as we approached the steps, the orphanage director said, "You're going to have to carry her." And I didn't know what to do. I was flabbergasted. I knew that box had been checked, or we would have never signed up to adopt her. We lived in a house that wasn't really good for her. So I just leaned over. She was tiny at the time. She was only like 40-some pounds at age 11. So I leaned over and she jumped up on my, I got her up on my back, and I walked down 3 flights of stairs with her. And that just shows you how handicap accessible China is not. Stairs everywhere, elevators, not always there. So in the 24 hours, the first 24 hours with Piper, I learned that she basically wanted me to do everything for her. She did not want to wipe herself. She could not comb her hair. She could not put her shoes on. She could not get dressed at all. She could barely feed herself. And her walking was very, very unstable. So I really thought, like, what have I done? What's going on here? And Samantha really helped. That was the 14-year-old that was on the same trip. And so they talked to each other, and they both really helped calm each other's fears, and they had each other the whole time, which I always say is a pro for talking about adopting two at once, is to get two children that are similar in age. That way they kind of have the same issues cropping up about raising them. Like this was a language issue, they both needed to learn Chinese, whereas younger kids coming into the family, they both got a potty train at the same time, or, what have you. So anyway, we went through with the adoption, and she has made great strides. She has really made great strides. I'm the first one to admit that I still have a chip on my shoulder, and you're probably gonna, it's something that's hard for me to say, but it's hard for me to attach to her, and it's been hard the whole time. And I love on her as much as I can, but she doesn't make herself very lovable either. So it's hard on both our parts. So anyway, that's Piper's story. And then the last two adoptions, we got Jack and Eli, who are, they were 4 and 6 at adoption. Elijah has Down syndrome, and Jack has spina bifida, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. So they were some pretty heavy duty needs, and we already had a child with spina bifida, so that wasn't a big deal. But the Down syndrome is our first child who was cognitively delayed. And his trip in China was really, really hard. I was not there, and so my husband was there, our oldest daughter and her husband. And that shows you the age spread of my kids. My daughter was married and had a husband by the time we adopted our youngest child, who was 4 at the time. So that trip was really difficult. Elijah was really hard, very stubborn and non-compliant. He ran away once and actually got lost on an elevator a second time in the hotel because he snuck out of the room. So that was kind of the stuff that we were dealing with him. And then when we got Jack, he was the second of the adoption, that trip. He was everything we could have prayed for and more. Just smiled and loved on everybody, and just was very precious. Wore diapers at age 4, still wears diapers at age 8. Will never be fully continent. Is wheelchair bound, and just a real joy. So I kind of credit God for putting those two together as adoption buddies, because by the time my husband got to the second child to adopt, he absolutely needed to have a child run to him, which I say run loosely, just jump into his arms and just be happy and joyful and make the trip so much better in that way. So faith comes into a lot of adoption, and your faith and your friends will help you get through your 2 weeks in China. Sometimes they are absolutely wonderful, and you just have so much fun, and you do sightseeing, and you love the food, and your child is just completely awesome. And sometimes it's very, very difficult. So I really, really encourage you to have some phone numbers handy when you do travel, so that you can have somebody, like I call it the phone a friend, like on that one game show, I forget, but you could phone a friend if you needed help. And so you definitely need to have a couple of phone numbers so you can phone a friend. And I am perfectly willing to give my phone number out to anyone, to cry with you, to support you, to pray with you, whatever you need. Some of you guys know that I have another business that is a care package business, and my friend Angela lives in China. So I'm happy to give her number out as well, to have a person that's actually on the same continent as you, that if you have an emergency, you can contact her. You'll have your guides there, and they are sometimes very good, and sometimes it's really hard. The first week in the province where there are less Westerners is usually harder. And then once you get to Guangzhou and you are around more Americans with their babies, you find a lot of camaraderie happens. You make your best friends ever when you go on an adoption trip with other families. I've got friends for life, because you live through such an exciting, momentous time in your life with them. And nobody else can share that with you for that trip. So I guess that's really kind of what I had to say Most of you guys probably know that you go the second day and you finalize everything. And it's actually pretty cut and dry. You sign papers. If you have a tiny child, they usually put red ink on their feet and stamp it with their foot. And then you put your thumbprint where you sign, and that's your like seal. I don't know what else to say. Make sure you have your cameras with you, and videotape. We took our children for the first adoption, and then we never took them back. And none of our Chinese adopted kids ever went back to China with us. It was always a money issue. I always went, and the one time we took my oldest daughter, and then the second time we took my youngest daughter of the bios. And then after that, I always had Angela, my friend, with me, who finished my adoptions for me, and the agency usually just let me use her as my guide. So anyway, I always had somebody with me, but I did travel alone from the US to China and then back. The other thing is, I really, really highly suggest you use a travel agent. This is like really off the wall, not really gotcha day stuff, but there's a lot of times when your flights get canceled to come home. And if you have somebody that you can call and say, my flight is canceled, could you please do this for me? It is worth every bit of the $40 that you pay them to do that for you. I've got a name of a person. There's another great couple that has started adoptionairfare.com. I'm very, very familiar with adoption airfares, and from what I can tell, can get some really great prices. So highly recommend them. Now you guys can unmute if you'd like to, or you can go to the chat box, and I would love for you guys to ask me any questions that you'd like to ask. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what you're doing. Anybody have any questions? Make sure you unmute yourself. Are you good?
Just with that adoption airfare, can you use that if you were trying to travel with points?
I don't know, but I would definitely try. I would think that if they have access to making airline reservations, that they can at least guide you how to make your points, how to use your points. Yeah, definitely. And I know some people try to use points with their hotels as well, and that's a great, great idea. I actually had someone gift us all of our Guangzhou stay for my my adoption of my aging out daughter, and she was from Guangzhou. So he basically paid about 17 nights for me to stay in Guangzhou, and that was a big trip because it was the second adoption as well, so we had to come back. But yeah, credit cards that get Marriott points, or I stayed at the Holiday Inn Shifu in Guangzhou. Definitely worth, like, you know, getting your groceries and paying bills with it and then paying it off every month. Good idea.
Can you touch about the flight home?
Sure. Flights home are always very interesting. I have a favorite flight, and so I live in Maryland, and I'm close. Well, I'm not close to. I'm about an hour and 45-minute drive from Dulles Airport, which is an international airport. And I have a favorite United flight that I take over and back, and it's a non-stopper. So they go up over the North Pole and down instead of around like the equator type global travel. And that flight leaves at 6:30 at night, China time. So the big deal is that you should try to get the flight to leave China in the evening so that your child will sleep. I also believe highly in paying extra to get the least amount of layovers possible. The first time we traveled to China, we did Northwest, and we went Baltimore to Detroit to Tokyo to Beijing, and it was 24 hours of travel because the layovers were like 3 to 4 hours. So that's when I started looking for those direct flights and started using that United flight from Dulles to Beijing. So, but coming home is always hard. Usually the kids don't want to use their seatbelts, and usually they need to be occupied. I would have a good store of, if you're taking like an iPad or a Kindle, I would load up games and videos on there. I would have a couple of new toys that they've never seen before. I think Play-Doh is an awesome, awesome thing for the plane. I remember bringing my son Jonathan home, and he was 2.5 at adoption, and that boy rolled so many little Play-Doh snakes. It was awesome. He loved it. We built snowman with the Play-Doh, you know, all kinds of stuff. That's a great one. And I don't know, maybe puzzles. Puzzles are flat. You can put them in baggies to take them over with you. You can take a picture of what it looks like on your phone, so you don't have to pack the box. Think of everything, taking stuff out of the box. I wanted to show you guys too. I don't know how many of you guys are on the China adoption questions, that forum that I'm posting on, but I wanted you to see this travel bag that I made. I don't know if you can you see it yet? I'm trying to look and see. Hold on. Tell me if you see it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
My video is like a little bit slow, so, but it's a makeup bag, and then I've taken stuff out of the box and stored it in the makeup bag, and then it can fold like this, and it has a hanger on it. All right, wait, it's coming. Here we go, folding. And so here's the hanger. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm going to put a link up on how to make one of these and all the things that I put in it. And that's a great thing to have for travel. If you can lay it flat in your suitcase, and it's got like all the medicines that you might want to take. It's got stuff like Kleenexes, earplugs, Tide detergent. It's got Thermacare, heat 'em up things for like your back and your neck during travel if you get sore. It's got all kinds of medicines in it. So I will put that up on my website, and you guys can copy that. Any other questions? You guys are asking great questions. Nice feedback.
How about like issues with scabies or parasites and how you handled them?
That's good. I have not had any of those issues happen. However, every single time I travel, there's a few things that I take that are prescription. And Elamite cream is one, that's for scabies. And Phenergan is the other prescription I take, and that is for nausea. Got deathly ill the first time I went, ate shrimp off of a buffet that were like, they were like colossal shrimp. So I'm thinking, okay, they're cooked, so they should be safe, but they weren't. And 3 of us got really ill. And the Phenergan, well, it helps some, but Phenergan is a really good drug for nausea, especially if you're like vomiting and vomiting and vomiting and you're getting dehydrated, that kind of sick. Let me think, what else? Yeah, you can take like Lace shampoo. I haven't had any trouble with those. Scabies is more prevalent than lice, I would say. So if you can get that Elamite cream, that's a good idea. A lot of times the kids have skin issues, either dry skin or eczema. So take a nice lotion with you, and the lotion is really, really good for bonding and for attachment, because they're allowing you to touch them, but really, I mean, you're lotioning them up and putting a lotion on, but you're also touching them, which they don't realize is a bonding thing. Just rubbing them and having that touch and letting them know that they can trust you and you're not going to hurt them is really good. And any kind of eye contact that you can make with them, sit them on your lap and have them look at you and rub the lotion on your shoulders or maybe up their back or on their bellies, anything like that. The lotion's great for bonding, and a lot of times they have their skin chapped or whatever. I know a couple of my kids came and they just had such rosy red cheeks from, I'm like, there's no heat in the orphanages. That's why they're so bundled up. They just don't have heat. So they have 4 or 5 layers on, but their faces are never covered. So they get the rosy cheeks from being cold. Sometimes just, they just cold all the time. So lotion's a great thing to take. I do have my packing list up on the website. It's the website ChinaDossierPrep.com. and it's the tab that says Zoom video chat, which is how you guys figured out the information to get here. So you should be familiar with it. I'm probably going to start a tab that says resources, and that way these recordings will be there, and also any other stuff that I put out there. Like I've got several blogs that I want you guys to look at that have different Gotcha Day scenarios, and you can really read it from the mother's perspective. One of them is like my friend Becky Katarkis sent me 4 of her Gotcha Day posts, and all 4 of the kids were completely different. Like one ran into her arms, one screamed and cried and hit her, one was just really, really quiet and was angry, and the other one was really ill. So lots of different scenarios. Another Gotcha Day thing is if there's 2 parents there, be prepared that the child will gravitate towards one and hate the other. Very common. And you can't call it. Like sometimes they'll go right to the father because they don't trust the nannies at their orphanage. So if they don't trust the women, they'll gravitate towards the man. Sometimes it's that they do trust their nannies or their caretaker, so they'll gravitate towards the woman, and the man is just this big hulking figure with the giant nose and the giant eyes. And, you know, they're just like, oh my gosh, what is that? You know, because they see women all the time. Facial hair, look out, I'm telling you. If you've got a beard or a mustache, they might be just totally weirded out by that. It's funny, but there are lots of kids have reactions to beards and facial hair. So anyway, they'll come around. My situation with my oldest, or my first adoption was, we got her and she loved both of us at the start. I'm sorry, can you see my pug back here? He's like baking bread. He's the weirdest dog ever. Stop it. Anyway, she loved my husband, loved him. And then he left to go visit her orphanage, and he left at like the crack of dawn before she got up. And then they had a whole bunch of trouble with the truck, and he didn't get back till 8 at night. And I am telling you, for 6 months, she held it against him. She would not let him touch her. It was crazy. And it started that day that he walked out. And it was almost like, okay, buddy, you left me, so I'm just not going to like you for a while. So, you know, it's silly things like that, but you just don't know how your children are going to react to it. So I know that once that happened, she would not be around without me. And on the way home, this is a plain red story, on the way home, she wouldn't go to sleep. We tried Benadryl on her, and you know how sometimes the kids react opposite of what Benadryl is supposed to do? Well, that was my girl. She decided she was going to be wired for 24 hours. And on top of that, she didn't want her dad. So Kelly got stuck with the wired kid in the seat for the whole 24 hours. I remember having Bill stand up and take her screaming out of my arms, and I put a blanket over my head, and I sent him to the back of the plane, and I cried to the flight attendants, and I said, I just don't know what to do. I'm just, you know, losing control, and I just can't do this, and she won't let me alone. And it was so, I mean, you're exhausted anyway, and I just like completely melted down on this flight attendant. And then I just tried to like sit in my seat for 20 minutes while she screamed in the background. And, you know, that was what I had to do for self-preservation. And sometimes you might have to do that. Maybe mom or dad has to go. They got to leave the room for a little bit. And it could be just sitting out in the hallway, you know, gathering yourself and getting your cool. It could be going down to happy hour and having a beer. You know, I don't know what you guys do, but everybody calms down in different ways. And you need to think about that. Having a friend with you that you can tag team with, and have them be able to help you. So that's Kathy's story. It was difficult. It was hard. First adoption. Anything else? All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you my email to make sure you have that. And if anybody wants to ask me questions privately through email, or if you want to suggest anything to talk about, I know I got one suggestion last week, and I'm going to try to talk about it next week, and that is naming your child, how you pick their names, What names do you keep? That's just kind of that's not a big conversation, but it's a little something I'm going to hit on. And I don't know, any other suggestions, I'd love them. If I don't get any big suggestions, I think I'm going to talk about what happens in Guangzhou next week. Like everybody, all of us will go to the same place at the end, Guangzhou, and go through the same steps. So I lost my internet, darn it. Come back to me, people. Okay, I see some of you are still here. I just lost my internet connection. That's the big deal. So I'm going to sign off for tonight, and I will leave directions for the next one on my Zoom site. See ya.